Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're journeying to West Africa, to the land of the Yoruba people, to uncover a timeless tale that teaches a powerful lesson about envy and contentment. This is the story of the King's Drum. In a beautiful, sprawling village, there lived a magnificent king, beloved by his people. But this king had a peculiar treasure, one that brought him immense joy but also sparked a flicker of envy in the hearts of others. It wasn't gold or jewels. It was a drum. But, oh, this was no ordinary drum. This drum was magical. Whenever the king struck it, instead of a booming sound, it produced a cascade of the most delicious, mouth-watering food imaginable. Feasts would appear out of thin air, enough to feed the entire village. The people were happy, well-fed, and they adored their generous king. Nearby, in another kingdom, lived a different kind of king. This king was wealthy, powerful, and had everything a monarch could desire. But he wasn't happy. He had heard whispers of the magical food-producing drum, and the green-eyed monster of envy had taken root in his heart. Why should he have such a wonder? He would mutter to himself, pacing his grand halls. I am a greater king. That drum should be mine. The thought consumed him, day and night. He couldn't appreciate his own vast riches because all he could think about was the one thing he didn't have. This envious king devised a cunning and rather cruel plan. He couldn't simply march over and demand the drum. That would be an act of war. Instead, he decided to use trickery. He invited the good king to a grand festival in his own kingdom, promising days of celebration and friendship. The good king, seeing no harm and wishing to foster goodwill between their people, graciously accepted the invitation. He packed his belongings, and, of course, he brought along his most prized possession, the magical drum. He thought it would be a wonderful way to share his good fortune with his new friend. The festival was spectacular. There was music, dancing, and games. The envious king was the perfect host, showering his guest with compliments and feigned admiration. On the final day of the celebration, the good king, wanting to return the hospitality, brought out his drum. With a few taps, a magnificent feast appeared before the astonished crowd. The envious king's eyes widened with greed. This was his chance. Later that evening, under the cloak of darkness, the envious king sent his most skilled thief to the guest chambers. The thief crept in, silent as a shadow, and switched the magical drum with an identical-looking, but completely ordinary one. The switch was perfect. The good king, tired from the festivities and trusting his host completely, noticed nothing amiss when he departed the next morning. He waved goodbye, thanking the envious king for his hospitality, completely unaware of the betrayal. Back in his own palace, the envious king could barely contain his glee. He clutched the stolen drum, his heart pounding with triumph. He gathered his entire court, his family, and all the important people of his kingdom. He boasted, "Today you will witness true power. Today we will feast like never before." He stood before them, raised the drumsticks, and with a dramatic flourish struck the drum. But instead of fragrant stews and mountains of fufu, something else emerged. A low buzzing sound filled the air, growing louder and angrier. From the drum, a single wasp flew out, then another and another, until a massive, furious swarm erupted into the hall. The crowd screamed and scattered. The wasps descended upon the envious king, stinging him relentlessly from head to toe. They chased him around his own throne room, a painful and humiliating consequence of his greed. He shrieked, swatting uselessly at the angry cloud, his grand plans turning into a buzzing nightmare. The drum, it seemed, had a different kind of magic for those with wicked intentions. Meanwhile, the good king had arrived back in his village. His people, hearing of his return, gathered in the central square, excited for the welcome home feast. The king, smiling, brought out what he thought was his magical drum. He raised his hands and struck it. A loud, resonant boom echoed through the square. He struck it again. Boom, boom. The people looked at each other, confused. There was no food, only the sound of a very normal drum. The king tried again and again, but the magic was gone. A wave of disappointment washed over the crowd. Murmurs began to spread. Was the king's magic gone forever? Had he lost his favor with the spirits? But the king, after a moment of his own confusion, looked at the drum, then at the faces of his people, and he began to smile. He struck the drum again, this time not with expectation, but with rhythm. He started to play a joyful beat. A young girl in the crowd started to sway to the music. An old man tapped his feet. Soon the entire village was dancing. The sound of their laughter and joyful shouts filled the air, louder and more vibrant than any magical feast had ever been. The king realized something profound in that moment. The magic wasn't just in the food the drum provided. The true magic was in the community, the joy and the togetherness it inspired. The food had been a blessing, but the spirit of his people was the real treasure. From that day on, the king became a master drummer. The magical food never returned, but it didn't matter. The villagers learned to work together, to farm their lands, and to share what they had. The king's drumming became the heart of their celebrations, bringing them together not just to eat, but to dance, to sing, and to celebrate life itself. Their joy was no longer something that appeared out of thin air. It was something they created together with their own hands and their own hearts. Their kingdom became more prosperous and happier than ever before. And what of the envious king? He was left with a swollen face, a painful memory, and an empty, ordinary drum. His greed had brought him nothing but suffering and humiliation. He had stolen an object, but he had completely missed its true worth. This story teaches us a beautiful lesson. It's so easy to look at what others have and feel like we're missing out. But envy is a trap. It blinds us to the blessings we already possess. The good king lost his magical food, but in doing so, he and his people discovered a deeper, more meaningful source of happiness, community, resilience, and the joy of creating something together. The true magic wasn't in the drum, but in the spirit of the people who gathered around it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into Yoruba folklore. I hope this story resonated with you as much as it did with me. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next adventure into the world of stories. Until next time, remember to appreciate the magic you already have in your own life. Bye for now.